to Missouri. We finally saw Andrew Lester in court. He pleaded not guilty to the shooting of Ralph Yarl. What was his defense?
Chris, that is the perfect way to ask that question because, as you know, we've had people on social media saying, wait a minute, he's pleading not guilty. Is there a question as to who did this? And from what we know, the answer is no. Investigators, police, prosecutors, and according to court documents, Lester himself all say absolutely he shot 16-year-old Ralph Yarl twice Thursday night. But according to those court documents, there's a probable cause statement. The 84-year-old white homeowner says he did it because he thought the 16-year-old Black Missouri boy was trying to break into his house. He says that Yarl, again, 16 years old, there, his family said to pick up his two younger brothers, but just mistakenly went to the wrong home. Lester says that Ralph rang the doorbell, and then this is key. He says that he jiggled the door handle, and that's when Andrew Lester, the homeowner in this case, says that he believes someone was breaking in. He was, quote, scared to death. He opened the door and fired two shots. The family says Ralph was shot in the head and the arm, and he's basically recovering at home, miraculously having survived, but recovering at home from a traumatic brain injury and a cracked skull. So at the same time, we have this plea of not guilty yesterday. We also have family members of Andrew Lester speaking out overnight. His ex-wife telling the New York Times, unfortunately, this does not surprise her. They've been divorced since the 90s. They haven't talked in decades, but she says during their 14-year marriage, he was prone to fits of rage, and she told the Times he would smash things when he got angry. Also, two of Andrew Lester's grandsons talking to the Kansas City Star and the Independent. One telling the Kansas City Star, he says that his grandfather lives in what he called a 24-hour news cycle of fear and paranoia, and then talked about a lot of far-right conservative media outlets that sort of deliver a lot of rhetoric tied to things like standing your ground and the need to defend your home. One of the other grandsons telling the Independent, he says that his grandfather would say disparaging things, in his words, about Black people, gay people, and immigrants. Unfortunately, both grandsons kind of echoing what the ex-wife of Andrew Lester said, that this unfortunately did not surprise them. And Chris, as you know, an update late yesterday, the Yarl family, the family of the 16-year-old boy, home recovering from these gunshot wounds, now pushing for a federal hate crime. We'll let this go by. A federal hate crime investigation. The Yarl family attorney saying that he was armed only that night with his black skin. Chris?
So, Eddie, let me add one more component to this, and it comes to us via the Washington Post. I want to read it. Lester said the teenager was a black male approximately 6 feet tall, several inches off Yarl's actual height, according to the criminal complaint. Lester stated that it was the last thing he wanted to do, but he was scared to death due to the male's size. The article goes on to say, in multiple studies, people who were asked to judge the size of black people tended to see black men as bigger and stronger than they actually were and gave black children the attributes of adults. The result, researchers say, is that they're seen as more dangerous. I mean, 12-year-old Tamir Rice comes to mind, among many others. How do we, as a society, Eddie, address that? Because this 16-year-old kid did nothing but find himself a block away from where he wanted to go.
Right, so what do we do when hatred is combined with guns? What do we do when fear and grievance combine with guns? I mean, first of all, we have to remove guns from the deadly weapons from the equation. And then we have to address, in some ways, Chris, the corruption of the soul that's at the heart of this, right? Not only do we have the grandsons and the ex-wife describing the 84-year-old man, but I'm actually, as well as horrified by the neighbors.
Yeah.
Here you have a 16-year-old baby knocking on doors, told to get on the ground, to put up his hands. That's a corruption of the heart that cuts to the center of the country. And so what do we do about that? We have to begin to understand more clearly, what is our conception of our community? What is the moral sense that binds you to me? If you can't see a human being in a child, if you can't see a child or a child, what does that say about you? We have to address the monstrosity that is our society at this moment, that's being evidenced every single day with these senseless murders.
Eddie Glaude, Maggie Vespa, thank you both so much for having this conversation.